Hey everyone, this is part 2 of the challenge. If you haven't checked out part 1 yet, link is in the description to do that. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this video. On with the show. So after the absolute tragedy that was Sonic's story, we finally get to move on to everyone else's story, which, you know, doing these challenges really makes me say things I never thought I would say. Like, oh wow, I'm done with Sonic's story. Thank goodness. But we move on to Tails' story, which is probably the easiest out of the bunch. And the thing is, the reason why these challenges have to be split into parts is that you have to realize that there are 11 stages in Sonic Adventure, and out of those 11 stages, Sonic visits 10 of them. Not only that, but each level is like sectioned into parts, and Sonic practically visits every section of each stage. So Sonic's story is very beefy, and that's something I didn't really notice until doing these challenges. Usually characters like Tails, Knuckles, Gamma, everyone will like visit the same stages that Sonic does, but they only visit the one section, meaning that their stages are way shorter. You know, like Big Twinkle Park I can beat in like 30 seconds, whereas Sonic's Twinkle Park takes me 2 minutes easily, even like if I'm going as fast as I can. The first thing Tails has to do is fight the Egg Hornet, which again, we all know that Gamma can't do to begin with, so I just tried to speed this up and do it as Sonic. But the first stage that we do get to tackle as Gamma is Tails' Windy Valley, and yeah, I still have Big in the partner character slot, and you might think that that's unfair, but there's a couple things you have to consider about that. One, I'm not just racing against the rival, you know, I'm not just racing against Sonic/Big in this instance, I'm also racing against the clock, and even if I were just racing against Sonic/Big, he waits for me anyway, so there's not much of a challenge there to begin with. But this is where the Jet Booster comes into play, and it's indispensable, I think, for Tails' playthrough. Mostly because, like, if we didn't have this jetpack, I don't know how feasible a lot of these challenges would be. I'm just floating around until I can find the accurate geometry and just land on where I need to land. But he can go through the green rings just fine, he can float down to other sections just fine. In fact, like, Windy Valley just seems, appropriately because it's Tails' first stage, it feels like the most simple stage to navigate, even if I didn't have the jetpack, just because it's the second part of the stage, which we all know that he can do by himself anyway, without the jetpack. And next we have Casinopolis, which presents its own problem. So, you know how I mentioned in Sonic's part that Gamma was probably about as slow as Big was? This is why. Something I started to notice, and I don't know if this is just the computer, I'm assuming it is, something that it would do was like go into its rod casting animation and then like jump forward. I doubt that's a thing that I as a human player can do, but otherwise that makes Casinopolis with Big even more possible. I, again, doubt that that's even possible for a human to do, but maybe? As you can see, I'm kind of struggling with getting Gamma up this ledge, or up this slope, because again, he's not a very fast character, but he does carry momentum, so the jetpack helped a little bit in trying to get my way up the slope. Otherwise, I would have had to go into my running animation to get up there, but there's not a whole lot of room to do that, even going down. And here's another issue with the camera. The camera's now outside the bounds of the stage, and even when it gets back in bounds, it's still really, you know, just weird and not centered on Gamma at all, so I can't really see what I'm doing, but I just need to keep going forward because I have like half a minute left. A thing to kind of remember with Tails' stages, especially early on, is that there aren't a whole lot of enemies to attack, so I can get back more time. And aside from Speed Highway, there also aren't checkpoints because the stages are already pretty short to begin with. I have to do Tails' stages in one go. But here's where I realized, like, because I died, I respawn in the level with only a minute left, meaning that even if I do the slope at the beginning perfectly, I still have only enough time to get to the end. So I figured I am not gonna be able to do this. So I just had to exit stage and then go back in instead of just restarting it. But yeah, Casinopolis isn't really a huge deal. In fact, with the fan sections, if you use Gamma's hovering, you can actually go up faster than I think Tails could, just because he's affected by wind bursts more easily because of the jetpack, I think. The biggest challenges in Casinopolis were definitely the intro part with the slope, but if you spawn in and you're hovering above the water, you can just have enough momentum to go into your running animation immediately, and the camera, Gamma, which was just so annoying to have to deal with because you're practically running against it and you don't see what's going on in front of you or where you need to go sometimes. Then there's this part, which much like Sonic's Emerald Coast, you kind of get stuck with and you just have to hold the control stick in one direction to get out of it. And then somehow Sonic caught up to me, or like Big caught up to me, I guess just because like the computer respawned him to like halfway through the stage in order to catch up with me. I doubt that he did that legitimately at all. But yeah, Tails' Casinopolis is totally doable as Gamma. And now it's time for what is possibly the most interesting stage in Tails' story as Gamma, Ice Cap. And if you'll recall, it's just the snowboarding section in Sonic's story, which we could not do because there just wasn't enough time. But because it's Tails' story, we start off in this section and we start off with like 3 minutes. So I'm thinking like, okay, this has to be more than enough time for me to actually reach the end, because I know that it's possible as Gamma. The only thing that makes it impossible is the time limit. But if we have 2 more minutes to spare, then it's possible I could reach the end. I think it is really funny just to see Big going ahead of us, walking at a leisurely pace and just destroying the ice while walking. There's nothing that can stop Big. He's just a beast. So one thing I remembered from a speedrun I saw a while back was that if you can somehow manage to get out of bounds with Sonic, I don't remember exactly how you do that as Sonic, but if you manage to get out of bounds, you could theoretically just fall onto the platform that you need to do, and I think this works for Windy Valley as well. But I figured it's gonna be easier with Gamma because I can just float on top of some of the structures. I just have to hover around until I see geometry, and that definitely was difficult because sometimes I was far away, sometimes like the skybox would spawn in, but I wouldn't know where I was, and I was pressed for time, so who knows if I would have made it anyway. And that's the reason I say that this is the most interesting level in Tails' story as Gamma, because I am convinced that there's no other way to beat this stage, given the time limit. If I try to do this legitimately, I definitely would have run out of time. But because there is a way to bypass the geometry and sort of land on that last part that I need to, it is possible. It's just difficult to, because I don't know the stage well enough to know where it is I have to hover to or where I need to land. Even though I knew it was possible, this one still took me a few tries just because I had to learn the layout of the stage to know where I had to hover. And even then, it was still kind of a close call, because even though I sort of knew where I needed to go, I still was racing against the clock to get there, and I got there with a considerable, or like a comfortable amount of time left, but not as comfortable as you would think. I think it was still like 38 or so seconds left on the clock, and I was just like, wow, even knowing where I had to go, it still felt like I just barely beat the clock. After that, we have the Knuckles and the Chaos 4 fights, which, again, as we know, Gamma can't do for some reason, so we're gonna have to skip those, which is then immediately followed by Sky Chase Act 1. Again, nothing is different about this. Riveting, I know. But afterwards, we have the Sand Hill subgame, which is much like Ice Cap in that it's a snowboarding level, sandboarding in this case. But I figured why not just do what I did for Ice Cap and just hover over the whole stage, because again, I'm still racing against the clock, and because of the snowboarding mechanics and the camera, it's definitely going to be very wonky. I know that for a fact because that's what happened with the big challenge as well. So I figured it probably will just be a lot easier if I just hover over all this. The advantage of that is that it gives me a really cool look at the rock snake, which I'd never really seen in full before. Like, you only see it hover over you, so I thought that was cool. Something else I found interesting was that these large, like, structures that fall off the side of the mountain actually have collision on top for some reason, and I don't really get why, considering that there's no other way you could get on top of those in-game. But, I mean, that's still cool to know. Like, I don't know why they would have coded that in, but I figured I'm at the end of the level anyway. It's like the last stretch, and I have about a minute and a half to spare, so I'll just do this last part on foot, so to speak. And you can definitely see what I was talking about with the weird snowboarding camera and controls. And then we have Sky Chase Act 2, nothing different there. But then we have my favorite stage, Sky Deck, but this time with Tails, so we're only doing like the first half of it. And I made some interesting discoveries here. Going over to the left, there are these pillars that you're supposed to grab onto, and I figured, like, well, what if I just hover over to the next platform? And because they're in the way, I'm convinced that it's because they're in the way and not because there's too much of a gap between the two, but the pillars do slow you down, and so you hover down a lot faster, meaning that I'm not able to get to that other side. But then something that I didn't really expect happened, which was when I tried to do it again to see if it was possible to maybe like hover around them, I guess the collision of the pillars made me float up. So I'm convinced that you are able to abuse that and get to the other side. Not no problem, because it is very difficult to do, like incredibly difficult to do, because I kept hitting the pillars anyway and I kept floating down as a result. Like it kept like sticking onto me and I kept floating down. But something on those pillars just it pushes me upward, meaning that I can hover horizontally for a longer time. It gives me more distance. I didn't find a way to take advantage of that, but if someone can find a way to do that, I would love to see it. And just to show you how convinced I was that this is possible, I tried it plenty of times because I was just like, this needs to work. I need to show this off. But the pushing me up was kind of inconsistent. I think you need the third pillar as well to push you even higher, but then you have to get around that, and the camera just does not help with that at all. But assuming you're able to make it over to the other platform that I'm trying to get to, there's a set of monkey bars right next to the ladder that I'm supposed to go up, and I'm almost certain you can't use this ladder, and I don't know why. I think it might have something to do with the set of monkey bars itself, because Gamma can't grab onto ladders in this stage. It's just finicky, but here I found it was like impossible to do that. Wait, is there a platform over on the side? Oh, I think there is, isn't there? Why didn't I just use that? I'd never even noticed it. Yeah, there is. How did I never notice it? There is a little platform behind the pillar that I didn't notice, so I didn't use it, but you can take that to get to this other platform. I did change to Tails almost immediately so I could get to the next checkpoint and not miss out on that for Gamma. But after that, there is a booster pad that is meant to send you to this pillar. Fortunately, I did find a way that you can bypass that just by the jetpack, and if I didn't have that, this would be impossible. But behind that pillar is another booster pad that sends us skyrocketing, and we all know what happens when we have that. I just phased through the floor for no reason. So that's fun. But if you manage to jump, you can bypass that and get to this other part of the stage. And because we have the jetpack, we can just bypass a lot of this a lot more easily now. It almost makes me want to go back to Sonic's sky deck and see like how easy it is for him now, but I really didn't want to torture myself. Like doing it once was enough for me. But with the jet booster, Tails' sky deck is actually, I'd say 95% possible if you know what you're doing. The only thing that you can't do, I know this for certain, is the opening where you shot out of the cannon onto the pillar, because even if you have the jetpack, you can't activate the jet booster fast enough to activate it to float to the other side, so you will fall down. But aside from that, if you're able to do the pillar thing that I said at the beginning, it's probably like 95% possible, which I think is super interesting because I really didn't think it would be, especially after the way Sonic's sky deck went. So again, we have the Gamma fight, which I'm not gonna even bother with because it crashed the game on me a couple of times when I tried to do it in Sonic's story, so I'm not even gonna try it. I mean, hell, it crashed on me after I beat the fight, and I didn't even do anything. I was just Tails the whole time. Then, of course, we have Tails' last stage, which is Speed Highway. In Sonic's version, we got through it with a little bit of difficulty, but it was 100% doable. So now that we have the jet booster, I can only imagine how much easier this is gonna be, and yeah, you can bypass pretty much the whole stage with the jet booster, which I think is just fantastic because it's almost like the game is giving me a break after all the crap it made me go through with Sonic. It really was pretty much just a straight line to get to Tails' final section of Speed Highway. Unfortunately, I could not float the entire way to the end, so I do have to do this last platforming section, quote-unquote platforming section, as Gamma. Fortunately, unlike Big, Gamma has just enough height in his jump to be able to use these platforms, but the last jump from the platform to the ending of the stage was a little finicky. I had to like get a little bit of momentum before I was able to do it, but you can do Tails' Speed Highway pretty much no problem. I'd say that Tails' story is about 90% possible, not counting the bosses, because spoiler alert, Gamma can't do any of Tails' bosses, and I was so hopeful because I figured, you know, I was able to actually defeat the Egg Viper, so maybe I can defeat the Egg Walker too, and no dice. I got to the Egg Walker, tried homing in on his feet, couldn't do anything. I tried homing in on Eggman himself, that didn't do anything. So that was disappointing to see that none of Tails' boss fights are actually doable as Gamma. But most of the stages are, so that's sort of, it's a give and take, I think, right there. But that, of course, leads into Knuckles' story, and our first stage here is Speed Highway. So we're ending Tails with Speed Highway, starting Knuckles off with Speed Highway, but he starts off in the At Dawn section, whereas Tails never goes into the At Dawn section, so again, a give and take. And as I mentioned with the Big playthrough, the biggest thing with Knuckles' stages is the placement of the emeralds. For example, on this first try, there was an emerald that I saw that was on this ledge up here that you would normally get to by either spin dashing with Sonic or climbing the wall as Knuckles, and I knew, like, okay, that's impossible. There's no way I'm getting that emerald because I can't climb, I can't spin dash. I can hover, yes, but I can't really go higher than what I can right now as Gamma, so there's no way for me to get this emerald. So I did have to quit the stage and then go back in. I'd say it really is a luck of the draw which emeralds you get, and that's going to affect how possible it is to do as Gamma. But then again, I think that can be said about pretty much any character. The first emerald was simple enough to get, but unfortunately the second emerald was inside one of these metal containers, which I figured, like, oh, what if I can shoot these the same way that Knuckles can defeat the E-Series robots, as we saw in the big challenge? But I can't lock onto them, meaning that Knuckles is the only one who can destroy these metal containers, which really leads me to wonder why it is that Knuckles can defeat the E-Series robots at all. I really don't get why that is then. And the last emerald was on this ledge right here, which made it easy for me to grab. Again, I think it's just a luck of the draw which emeralds you get and where they are. I don't know if there's always going to be an emerald that's inside the metal container. If not, then it's possible. I like to believe that it is possible, it's just you have to get lucky with it. Knuckles' second stage... Oh my god, it crashed. Knuckles' second stage is Casinopolis, and it's kind of a walk in the park, I'm not gonna lie. As I said in Speed Highway, it's really dependent on which emeralds you get and where they are, because I feel like if I had gotten an emerald shard in the Golden Sonic statue, which 9 times out of 10 I personally get, then I wouldn't have been able to do it, because I don't think there's a way for Gamma to actually destroy the Golden Sonic statue. But fortunately, 2 of them were in places that were kind of just out in the open, and one of them was in a robot, so this was definitely the easiest stage to do as Gamma in Knuckles' stages. After that, we have the Chaos 2 fight, and I want you to take a guess on whether or not we can do this. No, sir, we cannot. I did, however, try this fight as Amy and found something that is probably equally as interesting. For some reason, when I play as Amy, Chaos 2 will always shield. I don't even think that he gets stuck in his shielding animation. It's just that for some reason, he just wants to keep shielding until I turn away and am too far away from him. The only time I can really hit him is when I'm doing that. I'm facing away from him, I'm far away from him, and he's doing one of his attacks. When he's doing that, he's locked in that animation. So that's my opportunity to go in and whack him with the hammer. And honestly, I think that that was something that I liked the most about these challenges, was like trying to come up with new ways, despite the fact that the AI is the same, and theoretically, like, the boss fights are the same ones. You have to figure out new ways to defeat them because they're unintended boss fights. You know, with Chaos 4, you face him as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, but you have to fight him in the exact same way. He doesn't do any new strategies, he doesn't do anything that's inherently new. But because, for example, Chaos 4 was never meant to be fought by anyone but Knuckles, you have to come up with your own strategy as Amy to beat him because he behaves differently with Amy. But after that, we have Knuckles' Red Mountain, which I was sort of interested to see how that would go, mostly because I knew how it went with Big, and I knew that it would probably be in my best interest to go to the highest point first and then just hover down from there, and I'd be able to get most of, if not all, the emeralds that way. And I was trying to figure out if there was a way for me to do that, and it turns out that there is, that I should have actually, like, tried that with Big, because there's a rocket that takes me to the highest point in the stage. The only thing there is that I wouldn't have been able to hover the same way Gamma does, so I probably would have fallen like a rock anyway. But doing that, we're able to hover over to another plateau, get our first emerald shard, which I would not have been able to do as Big at all. Again, it's great that you guys told me to probably use the power-ups or get those out of the way before I tackled any of these stages, because I would not have been able to do this if I hadn't had his jet booster first. It definitely makes navigating Red Mountain a lot easier. I finally managed to see where the second emerald was, so I had to find a way to get back up to the top, but I figured, you know, it's probably just easier if I kill myself and restart the stage. Unlike Sonic Adventure 2, taking a death in a stage does not respawn the emerald positions, they're still in the same place. To restart the emerald positions, you actually have to quit the stage and then go back in. So that respawned me at a higher point in the level, where I was then able to fly down and grab the second piece. The third shard, though, I did eventually find out was underground, and I'm almost 100% sure, I could be wrong about this, there will always be an emerald shard that you have to dig for in Red Mountain, because that's the level right after you get the shovel claws. So the game is pretty much encouraging you to use them, or like teaching you how to use them, so I'm pretty sure there's always going to be one hidden underground. So that really puts... Well, no, that's not true, because didn't I do the big challenge without digging? Okay, so yeah, that means that Knuckles' Red Mountain as Gamma should be 100% doable. You just, again, have to get the right luck with the positions. Then, of course, we have the fight against Sonic and Chaos 4, which we can skip. And now we head into Knuckles' Lost World, which takes place in the room with the light-up panels, the walls that you can walk on. And fortunately, we know how we can walk on those walls, making a lot of these emeralds obtainable. Unfortunately, there was one emerald shard that was just too high for me to reach as Gamma. Though knowing what I know now, I'm convinced that if I'd gotten another set of emeralds, this would most likely be doable. Another thing about Lost World as Knuckles is that the timer is almost a non-issue, mostly because there are so many boxes that for some reason count as things that I can lock onto and can gain time from, even though they're not enemies, so I don't know why that is. It's the weirdest things that Gamma can lock onto. I don't understand why you can lock onto boxes but not bosses, especially when Gamma doesn't even go to Lost World. So it's not like you can say, oh, well, it's because, you know, the bosses are things that Gamma was never meant to face, but he was never meant to go to Lost World either, I don't think. But yeah, this last Emerald Shard was just so annoying because I was convinced that even where it was, I would be able to do it if I just was able to hover in the right position. If I got a good running start, if I was able to just hover from where I was to that last Emerald, I knew that I could get it, and after about like 20 minutes, I just gave up. I was like, you know what? It's fine. It's probably doable anyway. I just need to get them in better positions, but whatever. It's fine. And then, of course, we have what is my favorite, absolutely my favorite stage in all of Sonic Adventure. God, I despise this stage! Knuckles' Skydeck, and I'm pretty sure I must have gone on a rant in the big video when I did this level 2, but it's somehow worse this time around, and I did not expect that. It's as if the stage tilts more with Gamma for some reason, and I don't understand why. You get asinine emerald positions where it's just like, it's impossible. I don't know what I have to do in order to get the emeralds as this character. I know how to get them as Knuckles for sure, but it's meant to be gotten as Knuckles, you know? And yeah, I know that most of these levels have that mindset where they're originally meant to be obtained with another character or meant to be done with another character, but because of the way Skydeck is designed to tilt no matter where you are, and it tilts in different positions no matter where you are, regardless of how you have the thing tilted yourself, because if you get to another point in the stage, it tilts more, or it can tilt less, and that makes absolutely no sense because nothing has changed the lever that you have to switch in order to change the angle of the egg carrier. So that makes this practically, I wouldn't say impossible, I still think that there's a way for you to be able to do Knuckles' Skydeck as Gamma. It's just infuriating because you're not fighting against the enemies, you're not fighting against the emerald positions, you're fighting against the stage itself. And especially because of where the emeralds are hidden sometimes they can be hidden in the cannons that Gamma can't destroy for whatever reason. So you have to get godly luck and get those emerald shards in positions that are just easy. And even then, they will not be easy to get. Again, because of the way the stage actively works against you. You could get the best emerald location. You could get, like, the speedrun emerald locations, and it would still be a challenge for Gamma because the stage is just so annoying. Even when I managed to somehow not fall to the side at the beginning of the stage, I could not interact with the stupid lever, and then I fell anyway. And now I fell onto this thing, which I can't, I mean, I could escape from, I could jump off of, but I want to go to where the lever is so I can push it and give myself more lenience with this stage because it's just... And then the camera doesn't work on certain parts of it, and just, oh god, looking at this footage back is giving me agita again. It's giving me absolute anxiety and frustration, and I hate this stage. I hate it so much. I don't even remember if I got a single emerald shard as Gamma in this stage, which is astounding to me how this game works with Gamma and other stages that aren't his. I had to do Skydeck again? Oh my god. Yeah, after a while, I just gave up and I just did the level as Knuckles. I was mentally checked out of Skydeck at that point. I was like, this has sucked my soul out of me. I am so done with this stage. I hate this stage. And what do you want to see after a stage that was just the most annoying thing to do ever? A boss that you know that you can't beat. So that's fun. I had to do Chaos 6 as Knuckles as well. Whatever, it's fine. So yeah, what a travesty Knuckles was, right? Because, yeah, maybe you could do most of the stages. You just gotta get, like, super luck, which I'm surprised I got more as Big than I did as Gamma. And again, that affected the lighting engine. I really don't understand why that happened. I thought that was just a fluke with the Big challenge, but it happened again. Regardless, I need a break from Knuckles' story, so thank goodness we're doing Amy's, because Amy's is short and sweet. It's so much easier. She has 3 levels, which Amy has the least amount of levels in Sonic Adventure, and I don't understand why, because of Amy, Gamma, and Big, I think she might be the most capable. Amy's first stage is Twinkle Park, which I immediately thought like, okay, this is gonna be fun because it's really just platforming, except I have a time limit now. I almost knew from the get-go I wasn't gonna be able to touch Zero at all, because again, he needs to be hit with a close range attack, and Gamma doesn't have one of those, so I didn't even bother like trying to attack him. But yeah, Twinkle Park, fairly easy. In fact, I'd say that it's like way easier as Gamma, just because he's a little bit faster than Amy is, and you know, he can hover, so he can like just go over a bunch of stuff and ignore it. He can grab the balloon as well, so yeah, 100% doable. So I figured like, okay, well, there's no way I can't lock on to the whack-a-mole minigame, right? Nope, you can't. Even Big can do this. Gamma can't. It's incredible to me the amount of things Big can do, but Gamma can't. Like, it's astounding to me. Then, of course, right after that, we have Hot Shelter as Gamma. And oh boy. Oh boy. So as I previously discussed in the Big playthrough, only Amy can really turn the crank, so I was kind of not surprised there. That's pretty disheartening, but whatever, it's fine. Gamma can still bypass a lot of the level, which I think is pretty cool. Like, he can just go over this water section like it's nothing. Normally, you would very easily fall in as Amy, but Gamma doesn't need to do anything there other than hover. And then we get to this part with the stairs. The first set, Gamma can go through so easily. It's fine, it's whatever. Then there's the second part, which, remember how I said in the Big challenge that I normally just like use the hammer to get through? I don't even use the stairs at all, or if I do use the stairs, I just jump into the thing. That's what I plan to do with Gamma, and I was like, okay, I mean, that shouldn't be a problem. Except I start getting pushed off the stairs for whatever stupid reason. I'm like, okay, well, that's more trouble than what it's worth. That's more of a hassle. Let me just push the stairs the same way I did with Big, and guess what? A robot who should not have any limitations in terms of their strength cannot move the goddamn stairs. This is such a non-thing. This is such a non-issue for Amy, for Big, but it is the biggest challenge in Amy's Hot Shelter is Gamma, and that's stupid. It's idiotic that this is the hardest thing to do on her stage. This should not be difficult at all, but the opening is so small and Gamma's model is so large that it's torture to do this. Eventually, I managed to get through, but guess what? My time was running out, and I'm like, no problem, whatever. If I get to the next section, it's technically a checkpoint anyway. Then the game crashed. After way more annoying and soul-sucking attempts, I finally managed to get through. Gotta switch to Amy again for the other crank. This section with the gears, not the worst, especially since Gamma can just, like, lock onto the little switches. Again, does he need to? Not really. But he can, even though he should be able to lock on to other things, but whatever, I guess. You know, it's fine. And then I come to this part of the stage, which I have to do with either the stairs or the crank. So I take the stairs, and fortunately it didn't give me too much trouble, but oh boy, what a choice. What a Sophie's choice I had to make there. Surprisingly, the colored cubes puzzle, quote-unquote puzzle, is not very simple with Gamma because he's so precise in terms of where you have to leave the cubes. And I really have no time to waste because at this point, I still have like half a minute after I place the cubes, so I have to do the cubes as quickly as possible so I can get the other checkpoint, after which there is another cubes puzzle, which even if I run out of time, which I did, I'd have to do in a minute, and it's not the easiest thing, but it is possible. So all in all, Amy's Hot Shelter as Gamma is about as doable as it was with Big. Amy only really has to turn the cranks, but it is far more difficult with Gamma, just because of the things he's required to do. And especially because the game just kept crashing on me at every turn, and I never understood why. It wasn't like I was doing anything special. Sometimes I was just going to a different part of the level, and it was just like, crash. But then I head into not another stage, but the Echidna Tribe map to advance Amy's story. Well, you have to turn around so that you can go meet Tikal, and I noticed, like, wow, I am right next to Tikal, and the cutscene has not triggered. Why is that? Am I wrong? Did I have to go somewhere else first? Do I have to get another power-up first? And I think you do, because during the Whack-A-Mole minigame section, as Gamma, I was allowed to leave the room and head into Hot Shelter just fine, but as Amy, you're not allowed to until you play the Whack-A-Mole and win. I didn't know the Whack-A-Mole part was mandatory, and for some reason, I guess the game just doesn't have that flag or that checkpoint. It doesn't have the power-up flag, meaning that it can't advance the story, so I am stuck in the past. I cannot advance the story, and oh boy, do I wish I had known that. I figured whatever, it's a power-up. I don't need it to finish the story, but apparently I do. And so there was just nothing I could do. And at that point, oh, was I frustrated. I ended up going to another save file and just doing the trial mode so I could do Amy's final egg. And much like Tales' Speed Highway, that was like the easiest stage I had to do. There's no point you have to switch over to Amy. And yeah, it's really a non-issue. I think it's like the easiest stage, again, aside from Tales of Speed Highway. That, of course, leads us into Amy's final boss, which is Zero, and oh boy, guess what? Can I beat him? No, I can't even touch him. Fun, so not a disappointing challenge. But I figured, you know, okay, I can't do this as Gamma. I figured as much. Let's try to do this as someone else. I know I can do it as Big, but who haven't I tried it? And I figured like, oh, what if I tried it with Sonic? And surprisingly, yeah, it is possible. The reason I say it's surprising is because like you would think that he can only be hit by a weapon or something, but no, you can just jump on him and it works the same as Amy's hammer. You can't really homing attack his button. You actually have to like jump on top of it for it to work. And Sonic's eyes are always locked onto Zero, so it's kind of weird. He almost looks bug-eyed. And that, dear fellas and fellows, is pretty much where the challenge ends, because the last character we have to do is Big. I head into Twinkle Park, and as I mentioned before, if it's water that you can go in, Gamma will float over it. Yeah, there's no way I can actually go in there at all. Surprisingly enough, though, you do not need the fishing rod or the lure to actually beat big stages as someone else, because I was curious and I was like, okay, is there a way that if I'm inside the water as Gamma, if I switch to another character, go inside the water, then switch to Gamma, is it possible for me to actually grab Froggy? And unfortunately, no, it's not, because Gamma unfortunately does not jump high enough to be able to grab Froggy. Froggy is no longer like a thing that I can fish. He's like an animal at the end of a stage, or like an animal inside a capsule, like that's surrounded by that green orb. But yeah, no matter what I do, Gamma cannot grab Froggy because he doesn't jump high enough. Even if I'm on this ledge, his horizontal momentum will not make him reach it, and if the minute I jump out of the water, I start hovering above it again, so I don't think Gamma can do Twinkle Park as Big, and at this point, I was checked out. I was like, I don't want to try this with anyone else. No matter what I do, I'd have to switch to another character anyway, so there's no point in me trying to find out if I can do it as Gamma, because I would know for a fact that I can't. But I was able to grab him as Sonic, so you technically can do big stages as other characters. The reason I'm not doing the last story in this case is because we already know that only Super Sonic can do it, so there's kind of not a point. And plus, the challenge would have ended at Big anyway, because Big is just straight up impossible as Gamma. There's nothing we could do to... I mean, I guess we could switch to another character, but that would automatically mean that it's not possible to do it with Gamma at all. None of the stages would be, because all of them require going underwater, and I would have to switch to another character to go underwater. I've said that like 3 times. But I do hope that you guys enjoyed that. This was far more challenging, and I think it took me less time to do than Big's challenge, and yet it was far more annoying than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a lot more fun. I thought it was going to be at least I thought it was going to be simpler than Big's challenge, and it so was not. But I learned a couple of things here and there, especially about the things that Gamma is able to not do compared to other characters. Sometimes I learned how other characters worked as well, much like in the Big challenge. But let me know what you guys think. Is there a way that I could have beaten one of the things that I couldn't beat in this challenge? Is there a way you would have done things differently? Is there another challenge you guys want me to do? At this point, I feel like any other character would be a lot more fun to do than Gamma, but you know, let me know in the comments. If you guys want to watch another challenge video, I did one with my friend Nathaniel Bandy on his channel where we try to figure out if it's possible to beat all of Sonic Adventure 2 using only Sonic. And I think that that's going to be a really interesting one for you guys to see if you like videos like this. So until next time, stay safe and stay awesome. This is Char5, signing off.